Welcome to the Webdelics AMA. I'm Steve Elfrink, and we're having these monthly series of AMAs, Ask Me Anything, diving deep into the World Wide Web of psychedelics. And the main focus is to provide answers to your questions. And well, this is also a format I call formally informal. You've got three guys just talking here, sharing their wisdom. And we're also asking folks to, if you have questions, to feed those into, we're live on Facebook, on YouTube, and they will show up on my end here where we can bring those questions forward. And then also you may see a QR code up in the right-hand side. That is for our website, webdelics.com. And if you go there, also we invite you to sign up for our newsletter. So without further ado, I'm going to just dive into some deeper introductions. As I stated before, my name is Steve Elfrink. I'm the subject matter expert, an elder dude with Webdelics, someone with 40 plus years of traversing the edges of consciousness and psychedelic exploration, primarily for my, well, originally recreationally, and then spiritually, and then therapeutically. And I'm also working as a psycholytic, so low-dose somatic practitioner therapist in the great state of Oregon, and also a psilocybin provider in Oregon. And then joining us today is two wonderful gentlemen. I'm going to start with Mike Mumola. Mike is an attorney, an entrepreneur, former Bloomberg TV host, and avid proponent of psychedelics for healing and human optimization. He is a general counsel for Momentous Family Office and the conscious leaders of Omaya.life. He's also an early investor in Nobody Studios and assists Webdelics with business development. Mike, pleasure to have you here. And then our most esteemed guest and wonderful human and great person all the way around. And what we're going to be talking about, which I forgot to mention at the beginning, is the topic of from jail to federal court, how I being Jonathan Goldman, won legal protection for ayahuasca. So here's Jonathan's beautiful bio. Jonathan Goldman is the founder and leader of the Church of the Holy Light of the Queen in Ashland, Oregon, one of the first legally protected ayahuasca churches in the United States. In 2009, he was the lead plaintiff in the landmark lawsuit against the U.S. government that secured legal protection for the sacramental use of ayahuasca, or Daime, in the Santo Daime ceremonies. That victory paved the way for a growing number of plant medicine churches to gain legal recognition. Jonathan's path began early. Orphaned by age 11 in suburban Detroit, he turned towards self-healing, a journey that led him through the anti-war movement of the 1960s to becoming one of the first acupuncturists outside Asian communities in the US in 1976, and ultimately to a remote community in Brazil in 1988, where he first encountered ayahuasca and the Santo Daime tradition. He has since developed transformational energy healing, or TEH, a spiritually based energetic healing practice he continues to teach today. He and his wife Jane have led the Santo Daime community together since 1993. And also I want to add in, it's an honor, a pleasure. I'm grateful, excited to have Jonathan on board today. And he's, in my 40 years in the psychedelic ecosphere, there's a few standout fellas or ladies that, really walk the talk, have a level of humility and grace. And Jonathan's one of those people. So an honor to have you today, Jonathan, with us. So we're going to just dive in. Once again, my favorite word, because I love to dive in. So we're going to go into question number one. And we're going to start kind of low and slow with some of these questions, and then about halfway through diving deeper into some of the legalization questions. So for our first question, a very simple one, but for me with these AMAs, I always want to, play to the lowest common denominator, the folks who some have no idea what ayahuasca is, who might be joining us tonight, or they've heard about it, they don't have a lot of information about it, they're curious about it. So Jonathan, if you could just start us off with, what is ayahuasca?
Okay, so I'm going to make a little distinction, okay? Ayahuasca and Daime, right? There are some distinctions. Ayahuasca is simply a brew that fundamentally is made up of 4 components. It's made up of a vine that grows in the jungle. Technically, it's called Banisteriopsis caapi. We call it jagubi. It's a native name for it. It's made up of a leaf that actually comes from the coffee family. That's called Secretria viridis, but we call it hyena, which means the queen. Water and fire. So those are the elements. Ayahuasca can also contain other plants, and depends on the shaman, depends on who makes it. Quite often, what they're called ayahuasqueros. Ayahuasqueros are the practitioners, the shamans who administer ayahuasca, will add things like tobacco to it or other herbs. Even in the União de Vegetal, which is the other group that got legalized, sometimes they add other things which have other purposes. For instance, when they add tobacco, they're trying to make people throw up because there are certain shamanic lines of ayahuasca that put a premium on that. We don't put the same premium on it. The Daime, which is what we use, that has those 4 components, okay, comes from the jungle, it was for thousands of years the province of the indigenous peoples, various tribes in the Amazon basin. The legend of ayahuasca, right, which is not provable scientifically, is that when the Spanish came to invade South America and they were looking for the gold, because of their amazingly low consciousness, they thought the gold was the metal that you grabbed and took out of the ground and then killed people over. The actual gold was the tea that was made from those plants. And there were 2 brothers, Incan brothers, one of whose name was Ayahuasca, who took that and took their people and went into the jungle to escape the Spanish and took the real gold, which is the spiritual gold, which is the awakening of humanity. It's a legend. Ayahuasca basically is that, and until 20 years ago, was confined to that region. Now it's ubiquitous really in much of the world. That's a simple answer.
Beautiful. I've never heard that story before about the 2 brothers. That's beautiful. And also just tragic.
Right? It's the tea. It's in a concoction, which can have various amounts depending on the concentration, and also those plants have various subspecies. Particularly the vine has many different, depending on where it grows and how it's cultivated, has lots of different subspecies in it. So ayahuasca then can have slightly different color, different taste, and slightly different activity in the body, depending on those particular subspecies and depending on how it's made. So every shaman, or in the Daime, we call them faiteurs, which mean people who make the Daime. There are variations on the theme in the same way as any brew, even winemakers, right? Mm-hmm. This one makes it a little bit different like that.
So this, I want to just a little addition tangent of, because I didn't see it in any of the questions that came through, but this is an important one. What are the effects of either Daime or ayahuasca? Is it, how is it compared to any other psychedelics? Does it produce visions? What is the experience of taking ayahuasca or Daime?
Well, look, ayahuasca is only one name. There are many names for this brew in that basin. One of them is the vision vine. One of them is the vine of little death. Right? Mm-hmm. So all of those are representative of what can happen. Yeah, people can have basically what it does. Okay, here I'll tell you. Let me give you an image that better describes it, I think, than saying, "Oh, it does this." If you imagine that you are an envelope, and you're used to your envelope having this on the outside and that on the inside, what ayahuasca does is go like this and inverts it, so that what was on the outside is diminished on the and what is inside, meaning your spirituality, your trauma, your beauties, your uglinesses, your difficulties, all of that is brought out to be most present. That's done by creating an altered state, a vibrational state, which is unique. Is an ayahuasca or daime is cousin to psilocybin, to peyote, to iboga, to San Pedro's, to, right? They're all cousins in the same way, like if you have a family reunion, right? And you're like, oh yeah, cousin Bernie, oh yeah, no, cousin Patricia, right? They're all members of the same family, slightly different in their effect. All have that quality of creating a vibrational altered state, which diminishes the ability of the ego to control experience, right? Bypasses the ego, right? Body ego and mind ego, right? Diminishes the ability of those general controls, the way that we control ourselves, to control. So that the experience, so simultaneously, what I'm saying is what is inside comes out, but also makes us available to influences, spiritual influences, vibrational influences, entities that normally those controls would keep us from being in touch with. So it's both.
Beautiful. I love your envelope analogy and the cousins. And for me, like with a lot of these medicines, they're the great revealers, revealing what's on that inside, what's hidden, what's dark, what's not been seen, bringing light to those areas.
And so the ceremony is what allows that to be, all that to happen safely and with context.
So that's a great segue, because our next question is, what is the Santo Daime Church? So kind of slipping now into the container for this medicine.
Okay, so in the late 19 teens, right, 1918, 1919, something like that, a man who was born in the north of Brazil, who was, I once asked one of his disciples, who became one of my teachers, because he died in 1979. I said, his name was Irineu. His name was Raimundo Irineu Serra. He got called Master Irineu. So I asked this guy, his name was Padrinho Corrente. I said, Padrinho, tell me about Master Irineu. He said he was very big, he was very black, and when he told you to do something, you did it. Those are the three things he said. So Master Irineu, like many young men at that time, young people, but many young men at that time, went from where he lived, which is the north of Brazil, to the west of Brazil, because at that time the rubber tapping industry was growing rapidly, because they were making tires for the planes of the Allies in World War I. That was the origin of the rubber tapping industry. So many people, but primarily men, and then women came also to that region. And he became he was very big, and he was very strong, and very smart. And so he became a border guard. And at some point in that time period, out of curiosity, he went, and he was a seeker also, and he went and he drank ayahuasca with native people. The legend is then he began drinking ayahuasca with a friend of his who one day he was lying in a bed, and his friend was lying in a hammock in a little hut. And his friend says to him, "Irineo, come here. Somebody wants to talk to you." And he thought somebody had come and knocked on the door, and he said, "Who?" And he points to the moon, and he says, "Her." And that began, no, he said her. And a woman came out of the moon and began teaching Irineo, who had no clue of himself as a spiritual leader, he was just seeking for himself, right? He was a young man who had also his own traumas, and he was a first generation from slaves, right? His parents had just, because slavery ended in Brazil in 1888, right? It was late. So that began a quest. She told him at some point, go into the forest. You have to go into the forest for a week and fast, and you're just going to drink ayahuasca. And he then began the process of joining together, right? The Santo Daime is a syncretic religion. So the Daime came from the indigenous people. The form of the ceremony also has a lot to do with how the native people do their ayahuasca ceremonies. The clothes we wear came from where he was born. The prayers come from what is called primitive Catholicism, right? So it's syncretic. It has the indigenous history. It comes from the enslaved people also. So it has the Afro-Brazilian influence. It comes from the mediumistic perspective, which is another level of what goes on in Brazil. It comes from what's called animism, which means it has a worship of nature, right? Mm-hmm. So all of those things are combined into a ritual space in which then ayahuasca daime is the central sacramental practice. That's so from there, it was contained first in the city of Rio Branco, which is the main city of that region. The first acolytes, where there were 6 people that came, all of them were, except for one, there was one woman who was white, the others were black, mostly illiterate, agricultural workers and like that. So one of the characteristics of the daime is we sing for hours and hours and hours and hours, and we sing what we call hymn songs, and they're all in call and response, because originally people couldn't read. Now you have books and you have translations, and you have, you can go on the internet and listen to and learn them. But back then it was all call and response. So that form is still maintained, even in little Ashland, Oregon, with, very sophisticated, educated people. We have maintained as much as we can that original ceremonial and spiritual essence, to give respect, but also because, as Leo DeRocher said, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So
right,
that's that.
So then kind of a follow-up to that, to just kind of go a little deeper and more personal, what first drew you to the Santo Daime?
I needed lots of healing. Basically, right? So I had been in therapy with a Brazilian man who, in the middle of our therapy, this was 1984, I was in Boston. And I was doing bioenergetic therapy with him. And in the middle of our therapy, he went to Brazil and he drank Daime. And he was very discreet. He came back and he said, wow, I did this powerful thing. That was it. When we stopped therapy, which is 1987, he decided he was going to take a group of his former clients to Brazil. All I knew was, he said, you're going to go to this place. It's a mountain retreat. It's a mountain village. You're going to do the equivalent of 10 years of psychotherapy and 10 years of meditation in a month. And I thought, well, damn, that's a good
Sign
deal.
me up.
Yeah. Okay, let's go. He said, by the way, they drink this tea. Because nobody knew. This was 1988. Nobody knew what ayahuasca was outside of Brazil. Maybe there were a couple of people, or outside that Amazon. So I went there of that because I really had, based on my own trauma and the things I had done that I thought helped me but didn't. I needed lots of healing. So the first thing that impressed me was that thing of the envelope being turned inside out, and I was like, wow, spirituality is real. It's not theoretical anymore to me. I'm not nearly as miserable a creep as I think I am. And this shit is amazing. Basically was my first introduction. And at the same time, so what I discovered along the methodology of that was, I discovered how much extraneous energy I was carrying that did not originate with me, that had turned into illness and turned into misery, and the weight that I was carrying in my energy field. And that stuff started to be cleaned out. And all of a sudden I was like, wow, whoa, okay. Wow, maybe I could be a healthy person. Wow, what a concept, and not just spinning around in the psychotherapeutic cauldron. But wait, there's a whole nother way. And I was super, super impressed because I said it was like this. I felt like I was a really good basketball player at the YMCA, and I was used to being dominating. And one day I go in and Michael Jordan's in the gym. And I was like, oh, this consciousness, because this is super important about plant medicine, when it's done in its true context, it contains a consciousness. It's not just a chemical reaction that creates an altered state. There's a consciousness contained in that comes through that altered state. So this consciousness was way smarter than me. I was used to being very smart, way smarter than me, way more facile than me, way wiser than me, and was not going to cop to my shit.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm in.
Beautiful.
I'm in. So
I love that.
That was January of 1988. I was 37 years old.
A big awakening, it sounds like.
That was that. Say it again.
I said a big awakening for you.
Oh no, it was utterly life-changing, right? Utterly.
Yeah.
And it began a huge journey, and it's not, I mean, I guess there are people who come and they take plant medicine a couple times and they're like, oh no, I'm fine, I'm good. No, this began a really, really intense, very beautiful process that was, because the way we frame it in the Daime is, okay, it's about healing in the sense of energetic transformation, spiritual awakening, but it's about learning. It's a school. We refer to it as a school of love through music, right? So it's like any true spiritual path. It's about the knowledge you gain in the confrontation with yourself and the friction between your ego and light, and ego and inspiration. So in that friction is this tremendous learning. You see what I mean? So there's the energetic experience the spiritual experiences and the visionary experiences that are designed and meant to give you knowledge and meant for you to then now go and put it in your life. Santo Daime is a community as well, right? Made up of human beings with all the human hooby-dooby of human beings. So it's about like, let's take this and let's see if we can, there's a hymn that says, if we are really a different kind of people, we show it in the love that we have for everybody. So getting to the place where me, in all of my criticisms and all of my judgments and all of my opinions and all of my stuff, can actually say, I do love everybody. And I have moments now, after 37 years, 38 years, I can say that in moments.
Yes.
You see what I mean? So it began this spiritual path, not just an experience for me. The Santo Daime became my path, like people who become Buddhists, like people who become, follow the Vedic path, like blah, blah, blah.
Yes. So I'm going to do a quick
That's a lot.
housekeeping of just welcoming anyone who's coming in. We've got Jonathan Goldman, who is going to be talking about our topic today of From Jail to Federal Court, How I Won Legal Protection for Ayahuasca. This is the Webdelics AMA. Up in the corner is the QR code to our website, and please sign up for our newsletter. And then back to Jonathan. I want to kind of segue this into this next question and start going into this legal aspect that you found yourself kind of involved with. So let's kind of switch it up a little bit as far as going from how did you go from participant to this beautiful experience that you've had of awakening, the opening of the envelope, and then into a legal advocate.
So that was 1988. 1993, I was in Brazil, and I was in the same village that I had gone to, but by then I was an initiate, right? So in the Daime, many, many people come to drink Daime. A few people become initiates, right? And so I was an initiate, and I was there. Actually, the workshop that I had participated in, I had become the co-leader, not quite the co-leader. I was assistant to the same guy who had brought me, who by then also had become an initiate. So and it was in the air, all right? Jonathan's going to bring Daime illegally in my bag back to Oregon. And I was completely resistant because I knew what a ridiculous thing that was. Not legally. I didn't care about, I never have cared about the, like, worrying about getting arrested or that kind of thing. But I knew it was a big responsibility. So I'm walking on a path, and we meet the leader of the community by then, who says to me, so you're going to bring Daime to the United States? And I said, well, nobody's telling me anything, meaning I wasn't getting some amazing revelation from, Saint Michael coming down with his wings, and nobody was telling me nothing. I said, nobody's telling me nothing. He goes, oh, another one that wants to hear Gabriel's trumpet. And I said, well, what's wrong with that? He said, well, there's nothing wrong with it. That's just not how it happens most of the time. You have to do it through intuition. So the next day, I'm in the room, and the leader of the Daime, who lives in the jungle, who happened to be there, and I'm there asking permission to bring Daime. And my friend Jose, who was my mentor and the leader of the community, are behind me, making sure I couldn't run away. And so I put Daime in my suitcase, and I brought it to the United States and started leading rituals, being very, very, very humble about it because we really didn't know what we were doing. Mm-hmm. From the now, jumping back a number of years, I had been involved in the anti-war movement. So I always had, shall we say, a fraught relationship with government legal power. I was never impressed. I was never a person that was like, oh, they say you should do that, then you better do that. That's never been my way from the time I was raised. So we knew then, so we started doing these little rituals, very humble. And then as it started growing a little, because people found out about it, we knew that there was going to come, this was 1993, we knew there was going to come a time when we were going to confront the government. We knew intuitively. We're gonna, it's going to be our job, right? I knew it, right? I received it, felt it, blah, blah, blah. So we began from the get, keeping really good, everybody who came signed in. We got a 501c3, which is neither here nor there, except what it did was it gave us parameters for record keeping and like that. We kept really clear records about the daime we brought and how much we used and how we did it. Well, it's very crude back in those days, right? Just all by hand. So we knew somehow that we were going to do it. But we just continued doing what we did because from the get, we also understood, look, this is our religion. And we do happen to live in a country-ish still where religious freedom is a thing. And so we just kept doing what we were doing. We didn't confront the government yet, but we waited. And so that was 1993. And then in 1999, I was in Washington, D.C., again with the man who was the leader of the daime, who had given me daime to take to the United States. And I had flown to Washington to do some ceremonies with him because he's an amazing, incredibly beautiful, smart, fantastically developed man. So I find myself, we say in Portuguese, de graça, just out of nowhere. After the ceremony, I'm sitting on his bed with him. He's waiting to take a shower. He's just wrapped in a towel. And we're talking in Portuguese. And all of a sudden, he looks at me and he starts telling me about his father, who was put in jail for the daime. His father had died in 1990. Out of nowhere. He's like, wow, my father was... So I'm there, wow. He's telling me this beautiful story, blue, blue, blue. 2 days later, I'm sitting in a jail cell in Medford, wearing pink pajamas, thinking, damn, how did, so I called him, he was in Europe. I said, how did you know, Padre? He was Padre, and they call him Padrino. I said, Padrino, how did you know? He said, it was in the air.
Oh, geez.
So that was May 20th.
So how did you get busted? Or what was that process? What landed you from?
What happened was interesting, right? Because the União de Vegetal and the daime in Brazil do not get along for reasons, historical, blah, 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 political, different classes. The UDV tends to be people of more wealthy, middle class, and lots of people from the military. The daime in Brazil is made up of mostly very poor people. The lower classes, people of color, UDV doesn't have very many people of color, like that, blah, blah, blah. So we didn't have any communication, but we both independently started using what's called a import broker. There are people who bring goods from other places and they bring them through to the United States. Both of us started using somebody in LA, having no communication. Blah, blah, blah. It's a longer story than we have time now. But what happened was the government, the DEA and the FBI started scrutinizing me and started scrutinizing this broker. Happened to be that our daime, and the UDV calls it Ayahuasca. Their Ayahuasca and our daime came to that broker on the same day, coincidentally, and came through, and the government intercepted it, went to the leader at that time, his name was Jeffrey Bronfman, of the UDV in Santa Fe, came to my house same day and arrested us both. From then we had some communication. So it was based on blah, blah, blah. It's a longer story. Somebody came and a woman was coming to Daime, and her husband was mentally ill. He was psychotic, and he was talking to the DEA and became a snitch and blah, blah, blah. So the day of that it happened, a man in our community had died of AIDS. And Jane and I were at his bedside, because his mother and his sister had laid him out in his formal Daime uniform. It was a very, very beautiful, incredible moment, right? I learned a lot, and we had with us a woman who was staying with us, and at that time, now she was my age. At that point, she was elderly, who was also deaf. So we were in a rental car, and we drove home from that. I drive up to my land, and I see a motorhome sitting in my driveway. I didn't have a motorhome. I didn't know anybody who had a motorhome. So I thought, who's in a motorhome? All of a sudden, my car's surrounded by 5 guys with AR-15s, wearing flak jackets, yelling at me, "Put your hands up, put your hands up, put your hands up." My first thought was, oh, they were chasing somebody who was in a motorhome. And then I thought, oh shit, this is it.
This is it.
Yes. Really, and it does happen, like they say. It's like, slow down, like that. And they're yelling, and what happened was, so I turned the car off, but the key was in the lock and in the ignition, and it starts beeping. And I'm saying to them, and Eva, who was deaf, is sitting in the back seat, and they're yelling, "Put your hands up or we're going to shoot." And Eva, because it's going, me, I'm saying, "Can I take the key out?" And they're saying no, because they think maybe I have a gun. And so I have my hands up, and Eva's in the back seat. She can't hear, and she's going, "What? And I'm thinking, oh shit, they're going to kill us, because Eva's deaf and she can't hear them saying raise her hands. So I scream at her, Eva, raise your hands. They had been here for 2 hours holding my 12-year-old daughter and my 15-year-old son at gunpoint.
Oh man.
It cost me money in therapy, I can tell you that. And they had been holding them at gunpoint. They took us in, they put me in handcuffs, they ransacked our house. They had confiscated a lot of Daime. We had 240 liters of Daime that we had just received. They ended up taking me to jail, where I didn't spend that long, 14 hours or something. And as they were taking me to jail, I'm walking. It's a story, right? They blah blah blah. They made me bend down and spread my butt cheeks to see if I had a derringer up my butt. And I'm walking into the cell. They put me in these pink pajamas, and I'm walking into the cell, and I hear somebody singing in my ear one of the hymn songs of the Daime that says, "I entered into a battle. I saw my people discouraged, but with the force of God and the Virgin Mother, we are gonna win." And I was like, okay, we're on.
Bring it on.
We're on.
Yes. So then
that's the beginning of the story.
So I want to because I want to get into some more of the legal aspects, but I'm curious to kind of condense this next one about the legal process you went through with Daime, because I want to leave some time to talk about, the current state of churches in the U.S. and everything else, but kind of the focus in on the legalized. I'm sorry?
I said I'll be more concise.
Oh, it doesn't have to be concise, but I'm just shifting things a little bit here. But Mike, you had something?
I said, this is great. He said he's going to be more concise. And I said, no, this is great. Everything he's saying is really, really
it's
powerful.
All good. Yes. Yeah. I mean, I think what's beautiful with you, Jonathan, one, you're a great storyteller, and you've got, an amazing story. And also, just extreme gratitude, appreciation for what you went through. And it's, the ripple effect that it's, having to this day. But this is a beautiful thing.
Let me just tell one little more, because this is for Mike's benefit. So a month after, so for the first month, this was until middle of June, my wife and I were like, oh yeah, we're going to beat the government. Then the state of Oregon sent the Child Protective Services to schools to interview my kids, ask them, were their parents giving them drugs?
Oh,
and
geez.
we got scared, because all of a sudden, like, dude, these people have a lot of guns and infinite money, and we're just us. So we got scared. So that we went to bed at night, and my wife wakes up with a dream where she sees a courthouse, and in front of the courthouse she sees two battle angels, giant angels like this, guarding them, right? And I wake up with a song, with a hymn in my head, and I didn't know at the time then what it was. So I called a woman in our church. In the Daime church, one of the main functions is there's a person, usually a woman, who's a singer and commandeers the music. So I called her and I said, and I sang her the tune. So she tells me, oh yeah, it's this hymn, blah, blah, blah. So in Portuguese, it says, one of the verses says, the sovereign divine mother is in charge of these songs. It is to her I am surrendered. She is my lawyer. Because the word advogado, advocate, in Portuguese also means lawyer. So I was like, Virgin Mary's my lawyer, dude. From then on, we were not scared at all until 10 years later.
Love that. I love that. So I'm going to bring up our next one here. How did you get ayahuasca or Daime legalized in the U.S.? What was that process like for you? So from jail to court.
So got me an incredible lawyer on earth whose name was Roy Haber. Roy Haber's past was he was a lawyer in the South during the civil rights movement. And he had done many, many, many civil rights cases. He became convinced that we were for real. The first time I met with him, he was like, look, this is just a bunch of hippies taking drugs and they just want to make a story. He got convinced. He developed a case, a very, very brilliant legal case over the 10 years. Why did it take 10 years? Principally, it took 10 years because of internal battles in the Daime world. The most difficult part of it was not the government. Now, we under George Bush, we wrote a letter to the Justice Department. He tried. He was like, hey, under RFRA, blah, 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 blah. We got a 2-line thing from them that said, we will never, under any circumstances, legalize what you do. Don't bother us, basically.
Mm-hmm.
That was in 2000. That was year 2000. We legalized the Daime in April of 2009, principally because of the necessity in the Daime world to create what we call unity. And it was very difficult because blah, 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 because humans are humans, and there was all kinds of stuff. So that case was developed on, basically took about 6 years to actually develop the case, to get the expert witnesses on board, to write, the briefs and all that kind of stuff. At which time we put it on the shelf, still trying to make a unified Daime a unity, which we couldn't do. In the meantime, the UDV, the Unidade Vegetal, which is a completely different structure and didn't have any of that problem, proceeded. They had a couple advantages over us. One was that they are a top-down organization, and you do what they tell you to do. The Daime is not like this. Daime is a theocratic anarchy. And so they proceeded. Also, Jeffrey Bronfman is a billionaire. And so they had infinite money. And I had to raise the money, which we did. We raised lots and lots and lots of money, but it didn't come from one person being able to bankroll it.
Mhm.
So they proceeded. They actually ended up going before the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court did not legalize their practice. The Supreme Court affirmed their right to sue, which basically then ended up legalizing their practice. So people are confused. The Supreme Court because the government was saying they had no, what do you call it? No footing, no basis to sue. And the Supreme Court said unanimously, no, they can sue. So that was super important because it was one of the things that our judge referred to. He didn't have to shilly-shally about that. He was like, no, okay, you have the right to sue. Now sue. So when it came time, which was January of 2009, right? We went before the judge in September 2008. So January 2009, when we had our hearing with him, actually, it was pretty simple. He said at the end of the 2 days, he said, look, everybody knows what I'm going to do here. These people have the right to do this, and our job is to help them. And he would castigated castigated the government who had sent their C team, and the C team in the Bush in that time was the F team and anybody else's Justice Department. They did a terrible job, but they had no basis for it. They had no footing.
Mhm.
And so and rehearsing my testimony in the shower for like 10 years, right? So it was actually pretty awesome. I got to actually say the stuff that I wanted to say. And the judge was a super sweet guy. He was 84 years old, 85 years old. His name was Judge Panner.
Cool.
Conservative, like a real conservative, like conservatives used to be conservative, not how they are now. And he said at one point, he said, the government has done such a bad job. He said, it almost makes me want to change my registration from Republican to Democrat. And everybody in the court is thinking, what, George Bush doesn't make you want to change your registration? Like that. So he took 2 months, and then what he said was, there was two things, right? There's called the opinion of law, and then there's I don't forget what you call the other thing, Mike, or he said how you're going to do it, the regulations. The regulations, the DEA has 320 regulations. In the UDV case, their judge picked out 26 or whatever they were and said, here's how you're going to do it. Our judge then took those basically verbatim. And his opinion of law was these people have the right to do it under RFRA, under the First Amendment of the Constitution, blah, blah, blah. And here's how you're going to conduct your relationship, right? The government then appealed the part about the regulations. It was ridiculous. There was no reason to do it, but they wanted a victory. As my lawyer called it, he called it institutional ego. They had to win something. So they went to the Ninth Circuit, and the Ninth Circuit, which usually was pretty liberal, agreed with them and said, well, you hadn't sued under the regulations, therefore the judge had no right to tell you what regulation you had to follow. The judge then redid the whole thing and said, basically, it was like 2 lines. He said, these people have the right to do what they have, what they are doing. You have to help them. Boom. That was it. The UDV has a very formal relationship because our lawyer did not want to vacate the judge's order. The UDV vacated the judge's order in order to enter into relationship with the DEA. We didn't vacate the judge's order, and the DEA refused to negotiate with us. So we are basically still following that original thing that they appealed. We're following all those regulations. We import our daime. I'm going to go in 3 weeks, and I'm going to bring a bunch of daime back in my bag. And I have a permit that now are online from the DEA, and I'll have a letter from the people in Brazil, and I will walk through customs in Houston with a Daime in my bag. No
That's
problem.
awesome.
So for the people who, if people are listening who are talking about doing this, once you get your legalization with the DEA, the relationship is fine. The DEA, they don't, first of all, they don't give a shit anyway. They don't care. They don't care about you, right? They're dealing with cartels. They don't deal with you, but they have to because, you were confronting them. Once you get into that relationship, once the judge has affirmed it, the relationship with the DEA is actually pretty simple and straightforward.
So I want to bring Mike in more on this, because Mike, I want to have us dive a little deeper into kind of current here and now. Because I know there's more and more, churches that have been approved through the DEA. There's a handful that have gone through the DEA process, but a lot of just folks out there who haven't gone through DEA but are setting up churches. So Mike, kind of, if you could take it over here and take us a little deeper into this legal world. And
the
big question for a lot of folks is this one. How do I start an entheogenic church?
Yeah, my wife often accuses me of saying too much on shows like this, and in situations like this, listening to Jonathan, I could sit here all night and listen to you and not say a word. So thank you, honestly, on behalf of myself and a lot of other people who I know who would be equally thankful for everything you've done. In case anyone missed it, the way that this procedurally took place, and Jonathan, correct me if I'm wrong, he was arrested, as he said, and his family went through what they went through. But then after he was arrested, I don't think any charges were ever filed. And after the UDV case, then there was kind of a playbook. So he went on the offense, right, and said, basically, my constitutional rights have been violated. I want the right. I have the right under the United States Constitution, my religious freedoms, to do this, and demanded it. And this is all those years back, and just such an incredible demonstration of courage. And I just want to acknowledge that. So, and where we are now, I think that it's often challenging because out of the 300 or 400 entheogenic churches that exist in the United States, maybe 2 or 3% of them are, they're legal and have been given the blessing by the government and by the DEA. And so it doesn't happen that often. I often refer to it as a knife fight in the dark. A lot of organizations don't make the application because either A, it won't be looked at, or B, if it's looked at, you'll probably be denied for reasons that you don't understand. I think that's something the government's going to have to address sooner rather than later. And so I think what would be really helpful for this audience, Jonathan, would be going back to when you were starting to allude to the findings of fact. What was it that the judge, I think was it Judge Panner, what was it that the judge found as those reasons, those bases? My understanding is, and for those who might be unfamiliar, in order to have these protections under the RFRA, you have to be a church. You have to be practicing religion. There has to be what has been repeated again and again in cases, a sincere religious belief. And the sincerity of that belief, the use of the sacraments that are all a part of it, I think it was all of that. It was the sincerity that you had, the credibility that you portrayed, the documents and the record keeping that you had, all of those things that led up to it. So for organizations that are doing this, what are the things that you think are important that led to this kind of a finding for you?
Okay, let me just one parentheses. What happened after I got arrested is that the what do you call it? The state attorney, right? The
prosecutors,
government
attorney general,
the government prosecutor.
Yeah,
he said to me, my lawyer, he said, I'm not going to charge you now, but if I ever hear that you're bringing this tea in or doing your ceremonies, I'm going to throw you in jail. And we went to the judge and we said, oh my God, Judge, we've been living in terror. Right?
Yeah.
Which we hadn't. So
you had, yeah.
The findings, here was the thing, exactly what you're saying, Mike. For us, we had to show, and we did show, that we're part of a lineage. That we were not randomly doing this. We came from a long lineage, and we had, testimonies and blah, 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 blah. We had videos of that we made back then. Right now, you can make a video. This was more complicated. Part of it, a sincere religious practice, that we were taking care of the ayahuasca, the Daime, that we were monitoring it, and we knew where it came from. We knew how it got used. There was no what they call diversion. Basically, that's what the government cared about, right?
Yeah.
That we weren't giving it away to anybody, and that we took care of people as well as we could. It was actually a very important point that the judge ruled, that we are not a medical facility. We didn't pretend to be a medical facility. And so we showed that within that parameter, we did our to make sure that people who were coming were appropriate. But we didn't have, and we did and do have doctors on our staff. But that was a very important point. So we were taking care of people, but taking care of them in a way that was appropriate for us. And we weren't, the government said, well, no, they have to have, everybody has to have a medical exam. And their stuff was completely stupid. So was those four things. We come from a lineage. The practice was absolutely sincere. We care for the sacrament, and we care for the people. Those were really the four main things that the judge wanted to make sure, because we were legally what we were doing, right? Because under RFRA, the government has to prove
compelling
right,
state interest.
that has to prove harm. Right?
Yeah.
So that satisfied him that what we were doing was both legitimate and safe. And then within that, under RFRA and the Constitution, the whole thing, and that Supreme Court thing that said we're not the same, we are the same and not the same as the Native Americans.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
The same in that we are a religion, not the same that we are not an indigenous people, but we still have the right under those laws.
Yeah, and I think it's really important what you said, that you're still doing it today. Maybe it's changed a little in terms of the technology that you use to keep your records or how you might do things, but you're essentially doing things the same way, right? In the way that it was legalized then and should obviously then still be legal. And so I think that, and I think that
Yeah.
that is right. I think that is a good idea for people that are in this space to look at cases like yours, to study this kind of as a playbook, to see what they should and what they shouldn't be doing, because I get calls personally often from people who
The question is, are you for real, right? In other words,
Right.
and I have to say, do I think, yes, do I think that these medicines should be legal? Yes. I don't think the government has any business telling people what to do with their bodies on any level beyond this as well, right?
Yes.
And as someone who is involved with this and has a huge stake in these medicines being used in the way that they are most efficacious for people and safe, I think that there is a line of delineation, line of discernment between doing things legitimately, spiritually, according to tradition, and people who are saying they're doing that and not. I think there is a discernment to be made, and I hope, I'm both supportive of deregulation of some things. There's a whole thing going on about peyote. I actually don't think that peyote should be decriminalized. And that's the other thing I want to say. What got legalized was our use of ayahuasca Daime.
Yeah, it's a good
Ayahuasca
distinction.
Daime did not get legalized.
Right.
It's a huge distinction.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's a religious exemption. It's not a change in the drug laws.
Yeah, it's the expression of the religion, right? It's the activity itself, that ceremonial aspect of what you're doing, not necessarily the sacrament of the molecule that you're using. Yeah,
That's
I think it's an important distinction.
right.
It's fascinating, and the like I said at the outset, just the ability that you had to see this and to believe it and to go all the way through the way that you did is just it's so impressive. And so thank you. I think that people can look to what you've done in the way that you've done it as to what they should be doing and how. I agree with you that there are a lot of people. I get calls often from people who want to quote set up a church, and I say, don't bother unless you're doing this for the right reason in the right way, and you're going to continue to do it because almost all of it, it's not the 501c3 or the 508c1a designation. It's the practices, it's the
Be a
protocols.
church.
What are you doing? Are you really going to become a church? And if so, great. And if not, then okay. Yeah.
And
And
Are you
Steve, we
doing
could
it
keep going,
for
but I know we're going over on time, so I'm trying
what
to be
mistakes do
brief
people
here.
make?
yeah, I wanna, we can go a little longer because this is, and I mean, I think there's, obviously there's so much interest in psychedelics right now. The wave has gone beyond wave into tsunami level in a beautiful way. But I also agree there needs to be some guardrails with all this. And I know there's more and more, every day more, like mushrooms popping up, these churches popping up. So I also want to, before we kind of fully cut off or close this, the AMA, just a few more things to dive into, like mistakes, just practical, wise advice from one lawyer who's been dealing with this, and also one of the OGs in this process. So
Yeah.
if you
What
guys, if
mistake?
you're willing to stay on for a few, like 5 more minutes, just to address some of this.
Yeah.
Okay. The
So
main
mistake.
mistake that people make is to do this from their ego. The main mistake is to think that is to do it from your ego, like, oh, what a cool thing. I'm gonna start a psychedelic church because it's a cool thing to do. It's a mission. If it's for real, and then apropos of what you said, Mike, this was a mission. I came to Earth to do this, and I didn't have a choice. And I was given a personality. I'm really stubborn. I have lots of chutzpah, right? I'm the firstborn Jewish cousin, post-war, blah 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 blah. So I believe in myself, and I believe that I can do anything. And no, it's a mission. The plant teachers are choosing you, and you have to. The other mistake is to think that you got it. You don't got it. If you do this job, you will be put through your own transformation, your own healing. You have to confront your trauma. You have to confront your ego, your blah, blah, blah. If you're going to do it well, because you are a channel for light. You're a channel for these plant teachers who need an intermediary of a body. Unbelievable that they choose me, they choose somebody. But they need an intermediary in order to bring to bear on suffering humans this light. So the mistake is to think that it's not an ass kick of a job and to do it because blah, 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 blah. That's the main mistake. And then there's practical things, right, that we talked about. You don't keep good records and blah, 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 blah. But the main thing is emotional, mental, spiritual hubris.
Yeah.
That's what I have to say.
Mind can get in the way.
Yeah.
But Mike, what would you add to that with the folks you've worked with, what you've seen, what people show up with as kind of the big mistakes out there?
Yeah, it's so much of what Jonathan just said, and it's really using or trying to use the RFRA and some of what's out there to just circumvent the CSA, the Controlled Substances Act, when really that's not, like Jonathan said, what your mission is. It's doing the things you think need to be done kind of in a structural way to get around it, and that's not the right thing to do. And that's what I think a lot of people do, and that's where they make the mistake. if you're really going to walk the walk, if you're going to be a part of this kind of a mission, then to really do it, to make that a part of your life, to make that a part of everything that you do and the way that you do it. These aren't these therapeutic retreats that people go into for a weekend and make a lot of money and come out of. These are life-changing, very deep, very spiritual, mystical experiences with the divine, and everything around that container that you establish has to reflect that in the days, weeks, months, and years before and after. It's a community, it's a church, it's a collection of sincere religious beliefs, treatises, hymns, like Jonathan said, songs, gatherings, and everything around that to represent that this is your religion, this is that important, that sincere, and that powerful to you. That's where it has to be. Anything other than that is where people are making a mistake.
Boom.
Like, Declaration of Independence. Your life, your fortune, and your sacred honor. I mean, that's what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then, Mike, any final question from Jonathan that comes to mind from your experience with this, wisdom around this?
The only question I have is whether or not, knowing everything that you know today, if you would have done anything different for those who are out there walking the walk today.
Well, referring back to how difficult it was, I just would have done it sooner. No,
Okay.
Everything happened as it was. Roy Haber suffered. He had a breakdown at the end and has still not recovered years later. And so taking better care of him. But in terms of how we did, no. We did it. Like we did it. No, I don't have any regrets, and there's nothing that I can think of that I would change, except that I wouldn't have had quite as much patience with my brothers and sisters in the Daime.
Got it.
That's all.
Well, on behalf of myself and everyone who knows the good fight that you fought, on behalf of all of us, thank you. I really mean that.
Yes, I will reiterate that.
Except for my children, absolutely the most important thing I've ever done on earth. And I'm on it. It was hard. It was difficult. It kicked my ass, kicked our asses, and absolutely worth it. The way I've said it is this: we brought a drop of freedom into the sea of humanity, and that's good. That's a good thing to do.
That is a beautiful thing. More than ever. Oh my God, more than ever right now. We need many drops. We need a thunderstorm of beauty, light, and power. So then, as we're going to kind of wrap up, Jonathan, how can people reach out to you? Or if they're interested in your work, into the Santo Daime in Ashland?
We the Church of the Holy Light of the Queen, it's called. We actually have a website. It's called chlq.org, and people can reach us that way. We have an intake process. chlq.org. My own work that's separate from this, right? The healing work that I do is Essential Light, one word, Essential Light, 2 L's in the middle, essential.org. And have lots of stuff that we're doing, teachings and that kind of a thing, and like that. And
beautiful.
And, I also have private practice, and I help people that way. I don't use medicine in that's done in ceremony. I don't believe in doing that.
And then, Mike, for folks who want to reach out to you.
Yeah, you can find me on my website, Mike Mumola, MUMOLA.com. That'll tell you all about the amazing things I'm doing as general counsel with the family office and so many of the other organizations and individuals we're working with and doing things to try and help them make the world a better place.
A little typo on my end there. You are now known as Mike.
Mike, okay. Or social media at Mike Mumola, but yeah,
okay.
And then you'll find everything we're doing.
I can be reached at just real time going here. This is my practice, steve@omterra.org. As far as email, and then www.omterra.org. Then also anyone who's out there listening to this, if they're interested in being on our AMA they know someone that might be interested on the AMA, to be on the AMA, you can reach out to me here. And then, yeah, go to the website, sign up for the newsletter. Next month, we've got the founder of the Arrhythmia in Costa Rica. And so we kind of have a 3-part series really focusing on ayahuasca, and then we'll be branching out from there. But next month, towards the end of April, we'll have our next AMA. So stay tuned for that. So thank you for everyone hanging in there. I mean, we did go a little longer, but I think we could go another hour plus easily.
Yeah.
But we'll keep it down. And then once again, Jonathan, thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. From the bottom of my heart, of all the people that you've touched and just who you are as a human.
And I want to say one more thing. I want to, just for people listening, in my healing process, one of the most important things I did was working with Steve. In my 40 years
Amen.
healing,
50
years of doing healing work, right? And my anniversary this March, I started doing acupuncture in March 1976. One of the most important things I did was working with Steve.
Yeah.
That I don't take that lightly.
Yeah. Steve is as a master for sure.
Thank you for that.
For sure.
Yeah. And my own,
Honored to meet you.
Likewise.
Yes.
Honored to meet you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, gentlemen.